All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a very good and filling lunch, and I hope you're ready for our afternoon session. For those who just joined the conference this afternoon, ako po muli si Gilbert Jacob Ke from the Department of Communication. I am your MC for today. And once again, I would like to invite everyone to maybe sit closer to the stage. The lighting is better here for your photos. The aircon is also a lot cooler here in front. Para cool din kayo. Okay. Our keynote speaker this afternoon is a leading scholar in Philippine cinema and media. He is a film scholar, curator, and professor at the University of the Philippines Film Institute. His research and teaching focus on Philippine and Southeast Asian cinema, media, and popular culture with particular attention to film history, criticism, creation, and media literacy. He is the author of The End of National Cinema, Filipino film at the turn of the century, and leads critical memory work projects on independent Philippine cinema. He serves as editor-in-chief of Pelikula, a journal of Philippine cinema and moving image, and has held editorial roles in Humanities Diliman and Plaridel. He is the programmer of the Tingin Southeast Asian Film Festival and a co-organizer of the Association for Southeast Asian Cinema's Biennial Conference. His curatorial and research works engage questions of politics, aesthetics, circulation, technological change, and historical memory in moving image culture. Most importantly, he also served as the panelist for my MA thesis defense some years back. If not for him, the other co-panelists, and of course my advisor, I wouldn't have graduated. So let us all give a very warm applause to Dr. Patrick Campos.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat sa organizers ng Patok na Patok Conference sa pag-imbita sa akin. Prof. Christine, sabi ko nga, it's such a pleasure and honor to be here because I've listened to a lot of great scholars speak in Leong Hall, and to be here is really an amazing thought. No? So, nagbago ng bahagya yung title ng papel ko pero pareho rin naman ng sasabi. So the paper is a thought experiment and a meditation on history. So let me snatch you away momentarily from the fast-paced present tense of contemporary pop culture. So it does not claim that Rizal anticipated media theory, but something more modest and perhaps more unsettling, that the question he placed inside the colonial room in 1891 has not yet been answered, and that we might think about why, by staying inside the room with him, and for a while, hope that we will still remember your El Filibusterismo, Jose Rizal's second novel, sequel to Noli Me Tangere in case people here don't remember, and published after his annotations of Morga. So we begin with the room. Senor Leeds, a genuine Yankee who has learned his Spanish on the Latin American circuit and brought his show to Manila, has rented a room for the occasion and dressed it accordingly. Black drapery from ceiling to floor, alcohol lamps burning their quivering blue flames against the dark, a velvet rail drawn across the center of the space, and beyond the rail, a shrouded table where a box of ashes wait in stillness. The guests have paid, by rank and by price, for the right to be inside this room. Padre Salvi is here, already marked in the two novels by consuming guilt. Ben Zaib, the journalist, whose reflex when confronted with something he cannot answer is to prove that it is fake. And the Alta de Sociedad of colonial society. Rizal arranges the room as a field of vision. The eye is drawn, and where it should fall and held is the chapter. The show is Patok, buzzed through rumor before the door even opened. A hit, in the idiom of the fair, is never only the moment of landing. It is the word of mouth that preceded the show and the astonishment on the faces of those who emerged from it. El Fili has often been considered the more taxing novel, heavier on argument than drama. Chapter 18, Legerdemain, is one such section that does not advance the plot, and for a century of readers, this chapter has registered as a problem. a Gothic digression in a novel already accused of being so loose, an interruption that delays Simon's conspiracy in the students' campaign for a Spanish academy. The stalled clock, it turns out, is the argument itself. What a novel ordinarily does is subordinate time to action. Chapter 18 of El Fili, in fact, stops that chain. A ghostly head rises, the room is terrified, the head returns to ash, but nothing has been resolved. The clock of the novel has not advanced. And yet the chapter, I argue, is among the most politically charged Rizal ever wrote. Without a forward pull, the image has to be faced squarely. The head is not a plot development, but a temporal event. Rizal was in London and Ghent from 1890 to 1891, annotating Morga at the British Museum, turning the pages of a 16th century chronicle that Spanish administration had spent 2 centuries burying. He places the El Fili spectacle at the crossing of these times, the past that was suppressed, the present built on that suppression, the future that present arrangement was projecting as permanent. What the apparatus does, the apparatus of Senor Leeds, the dark room, the blue flames, the velvet rail, the rhythm of what is revealed and when, is to make those 3 registers appear as one appointment briefly in one image. A room where centuries are made to answer for each other. The velvet rail does not belong only to that room, but it organizes who enters and on what terms, what those inside are made to see, what those outside will never be shown, is not a feature of a single Quiapo fair in the early 1890s. It is the logic of any arrangement in which power governs appearance and history survives only in the forms it could not fully contain. Let me say that again. It is the logic of any arrangement in which power governs appearance and history survives only in the forms it could not fully contain. George Orwell, writing 50 years after Rizal, gave this logic its memorable formulation. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Read as a circular mechanism rather than an aphorism, which is my paper, and instead of reading it as wisdom, I'm reading it as a clock. This is the architecture of the chapter that is working inside and working against, the chapter in El Fili. No? What kind of image becomes necessary when power governs visibility and history survives only in damaged, mediated form? So this is my thesis, this is not exactly a thesis question, but something I've been really interested in thinking about. What kind of image becomes necessary when power governs visibility and history survives only in damaged, mediated form? The fair that surrounds Senor Leeds' room is at the outer edge open to everyone. If you remember your El Fili, there's a fiesta, and outside that show of Senor Leeds are all the people in the fair. No? There are booths, lanterns, toys, music, the January night thick with bodies moving among spectacles and wares, the plaza alive with the particular pleasure of a crowd that knows itself to be a crowd. Then the chapter cuts inward and marks a narrower space. Senor Leeds' apparatus is reserved only for friars, functionaries, and government officials. Entry by social standing, entry by price, entry by the logic of rank that has governed itself as an audience. Those who cannot cross the rail do not simply wait, however. The people outside act. They read the situation. They make meaning. They talk. Their words that conjure images is what makes the room worth entering. The fragments they collect from those who file out with their terrified faces are what will carry the show across the city and into the following week. What the Quiapo Fair signifies is that controlling who cannot see something is also a way of controlling what, by embellishment and rumor, it will be believed to mean. Senor Leeds' show arrives in a city already practiced in the management of its entertainments. So in the same novel, may issue on censorship, what theatrical plays are allowed in Manila. So the colonial administration, as the novel shows, was not indifferent to what Manila's theaters could stage. The battle over which operettas could run and in what language was ongoing and unresolved throughout the decade, and that was one issue in El Filibusterismo. Senor Leeds' chamber sits inside that contested field of what should be censored and what the government considers quote-unquote safe. Senor Leeds is foreign, His show is about ancient Egypt and magic. His apparatus in principle available for inspection because Benzaib will look under the curtain. And yet what the talking head will say in the room is not inspectable in advance, cannot be licensed, and will not stay within the bounds of entertainment once it has been unleashed. The patok that colonial culture most feared was not the obviously seditious text. It was the form that arrived as amusement and left the room as something else entirely. The velvet rail is one solution to a problem the colonial order had already solved in other spaces. In the confessional, the screen between priest and penitent ensures knowledge flows in one direction only. The subject speaks, the authority adjudicates. The classroom worked toward the same end. The history, colonial pedagogy authorized could only be received but never challenged. Senor Leeds' rail is a mechanism, but it operates on the same logic. Those outside receive effects, but not explanations. They know something has happened in that room, but they cannot know what it is. Meanwhile, they wait, they read the room, they talk. The colonial subject's relation to authorized time was, in some sense, always this: the future arriving on a schedule kept by someone else, legible only when it had already been passed through the door. What the crowd outside Senor Leeds' door knows of the show is assembled from bits and pieces. This is how publics have assembled their knowledge of what power does behind closed doors, or in social media, for example. From what escapes, from what the faces and caught words of the admitted betray, from the signs of a disturbance no official account will record. By morning, the city will have its version of what happened in Senor Leeds' chamber, but the crowd outside has not disappeared. The second life of what is patok, the life that makes it matter beyond the show, belongs to those who were not admitted to the room. The apparatus stages the event. What the excluded crowd carries out will complete it. The head, finally, suddenly, rises from the ashes. Not the ashes of something destroyed. These have been composed in a box on a table, set out as if return was always the plan. What emerges is not a ghost in the usual sense. Ghosts are involuntary, unauthorized returns. This one, this head, is timed, managed by a mechanism the showman controls, placed in a colonial room by Rizal in a manner that privileged and powerful audience in the room cannot manage. So I guess I want to underline that. No? So there are things that power can manage, and there are things that escape this management. And this room is one such example. No? Calling it a hoax, as Benzaib sort of does, by unveiling the mirrors, only explains the mechanism. Yes, there's just a machine, no? But it says nothing about what the mechanism signifies. Inuthis, that's the name of the head, if you remember El Fili, is a fabricated witness. He arrives from a deep pre-colonial past through a present that has spent effort suppressing its own history, to make a claim on a future that authorities in the room have assumed is already settled. The speech of Inuthis is simple but brutal. Inuthis recounts the ruin of a man who had love, standing, and property, destroyed by a priest who coveted what was his. Sacred authority became the cover for this priest's desire. Secrecy, the instrument of dispossession. The man was stripped of everything and driven from his life. In the chamber before Padre Salvi, this is not ancient history, of course. He is one of its architects, the priest in Noli who used institutional power to persecute Ibarra, the reformist returned from Europe, falsely accused, exiled from the colony. His beloved Maria Clara cloistered in a convent. Ibarra has since become Simon, the jeweler moving through El Fili toward a different reckoning. Inuthis is Ibarra's lamenting cry, Simon's pointed finger. Speaking from displacement, before the man and the ruling elite responsible through a mechanism no court can indict. Ancient Egypt, colonial Philippines, the timeline of the two novels, and the apparition, all made to answer for each other at once. The form that makes this possible belongs to a world much larger than Quiapo. Talking heads, so let me digress a little bit.
Talking head illusions, a figure speaking from apparent nothingness, voice detached from body, surrounded by controlled darkness, had been drawing audiences since the mid-1860s. By the 1890s, variants had toured provincial theaters, colonial fairs, and exhibition halls across a by now connected world from Europe to its colonized counterparts. The form was already circulating before it arrived in Manila, in the Inutis form. No? Rizal was writing inside that circulation. Obviously, he knew what this apparatus was. The dark room that Senor Leeds rents in Quiapo is one of many such rooms across many such fairs in many such colonial cities. But Rizal has placed in it something the others did not. Inutis arrives from the past that the colonial present has worked hardest to silence. The authorities in Senor Leeds' room have controlled the present through the pulpit, the government record, the syllabus, and that control of the present has led them extol colonial continuity as though it had no wound at its foundation. The circuit holds when the controlled present authorizes the managed past, which projects the future the present arrangement requires. A future in which nothing is pending, nothing is wrong, nothing is owed. Inutis rises from exactly that suppressed past, speaks from the very distance supposed to render him unreachable. He appears where he is not supposed to appear. He speaks of what cannot in colonial Philippines be officially addressed. In other words, bawal si Inutis, pero nandun siya. It answers our question, what kind of image becomes necessary when power governs visibility and history survives only in damage-mediated form?
What's the given?
Here's another digression. No? So there's something tantalizing in the coincidence that the most searching account of what a photographic image does begins with the same Egyptian practice, the body mummified, preserved against time's dissolution, presence held from disappearing, life maintained in the medium of death. Senor Leeds' apparatus is working on that logic in reverse, not arrest, but the brief return of what was supposed to have been entirely reduced to ashes. But yes, the same arresting of time and harboring of memory the way photographs do. What makes Inutis powerful is in fact not that he succeeds doing something in that room. Ben Zaid can expose the mechanism. No fraile in the room can be legally indicted on the strength of an apparition's tale told. So walang nagawa yung testimony. No? And Inutis returns as the performance end to the condition he came from, ashes. Nevertheless, and this is another argument, he is the necessary image in this evening of merriment. He was insisting that this has been, that a buried past does not stop pressing on the present merely because the present has been administered as though it did not exist. What has happened does not stay behind. What has happened settles, it survives, it goes deep under, it waits until it finds the apparatus it needs. The ash he returns to, therefore, is not a failure, although it seems that the chapter has done nothing. Under the conditions available, and certainly not the conditions justice would prefer, that is enough to make room for potential change. The logic that makes Inutis possible, the technically produced apparition that insists rather than proves, that cannot be held but will not be dismissed, was moving toward the genesis of a new form. In fact, so this is another digression, a third digression. Arguably, Rizal had been imagining a version of the motion picture in this chapter. So this is what I found really tantalizing as well. No? Rizal did not see motion picture arrive in Manila, however. He was executed at Bagong Bayan on December 30, 1896. Just 2 days later, on January 1, 1897, the Pertiera Motion Picture Exhibition opened at number 12 Interior Escolta, and moving images were projected for a Manila audience for the first time, not a long distance from where he was fatally shot. He was in the past before his future reached him. The apparatus arrived as his aftershock into a city that had watched its most dangerous rioter alongside filibusteros, subversivos, revolutionarios, all of them pressing on the circuit at its seams. In chapter 18, Rizal explains the mechanism of the Sphinx in a footnote at the chapter's end. The Sphinx effect had its documented debut at the Egyptian Hall in London in 1865.
and Victorian accounts of it corresponded almost exactly to what Senor Leeds stages in Quiapo, except Rizal's version reads more like a hologram or a projected image, which is to say that in his explanation, it didn't seem to add up, but it seemed like an imagination of motion picture, no? At least as far as I'm reading it. No? Rizal had encountered this world in European cities, in the print culture of connected empires, and he placed a recognizable form of it in colonial Rome for reasons the form was not originally designed. The footnote is an act of demystification, placing Rizal in the conjuncture of the age of science, registering his disdain for obscurantism. So syempre pinaliwanag niya kasi ayaw niya ng mysticism, mystification. And yet the scene's force is not dissolved by this explanation. The room still transforms. Benzaid was right about the mirrors, but was wrong about what the mirrors meant. What was gathering around Rizal as he wrote in 1890 and 1891 was not only a form of entertainment, but a reorganization of the visible world, characterized by early film historians as the 1900 episteme. But I'd like you to, I don't think I underlined it, I want to underline now. No? So he was writing El Fili in 1890 and 1891. And those years are particularly important toward the invention of the motion picture. And just to slow down a bit, no, if you can imagine a world where there was no motion picture projection, and then tomorrow imagine that there is motion picture projection, that's actually a transformed world, right? In fact, the first time people saw motion picture, they were terrified. It's almost like this Inutis chapter, no? When the Ilustrados were in Europe some years earlier, noong 1890 and 1891, Etienne Jules Marie was in Paris decomposing animal and human motion into sequences of still photographs, duration rendered frame by frame. Edward Muybridge had arrested motion in California a decade earlier, the horse parsed in instants, the continuous suddenly countable. So by 1894, just 2 years after the publication of El Fili, the Edison-Dixon kinetoscope was showing moving images to paying audiences in New York, one viewer at a time, bent over a peephole. The Lumiere cinematograph changed the geometry in 1895. So malapit na malapit sa El Fili, months before the Philippine Revolution, just a few months before the Philippine Revolution. The peephole became a projection, the individual became an audience, and what had been a private technical marvel became a shared social event in a darkened room. Rizal was therefore writing at the precise hinge between the decomposition of motion and its reassembly as projection, between the laboratory and the theater, imagining the political question of managed appearance at the moment when the industry capable of institutionalizing it was built elsewhere and would soon arrive in his patria adorada. Na-miss lang niya ng 2 araw, no? The apparatus arrived with its own rank admission, 1 peso for first-class seat, 50 centavos for general entry, in a city where common laborers' daily wages ran to only 25 centavos on a good day, meaning hindi open ang sine para sa lahat. Like always, the new technology was for the privileged. The dark room Senor Leeds had rented was a single evening. What arrived on the escolta was an institution. The new apparatus arrived as Rizal's aftershock and as the confirmation of his chapter's governing question. The invention of a new kind of room does not settle who decides what appears in it. And then the revolution came. Spanish rule collapsed. The technologies of moving image and projection had reached Manila in 1897, were absorbed into a new dispensation. The dark room did not close. It was refurnished and reopened under new management. What survived the transition was not the colonial apparatus, but the question its apparatus had never answered. Who controls the room? Who decides what appears inside it? Who is allowed inside that room? Whose wound is legible enough to become a public event in that room? The loop had migrated. Chapter 18 leaves this migration without comfort and without the suggestion that a change of management has yet settled the question Rizal left inside that room. The room that Senor Leeds built was a scene. One evening, one threshold, one set of curtains and lamps, a velvet rail you could stand beside if you had not paid to cross it. What has taken its place is not a room. First, it was the movie theater. Today, it is the feed, the ranking system that determines what is shown to whom and in what order. But what it is managing, admission, visibility, the conditions under which something can appear as public truth, is recognizable from the Quiapo evening in El Fili. Tiered access, controlled appearance, the interests of those who run the room rendered invisible by the design of the room itself. The Patok of the Colonial Fair is produced by algorithm. The Patok of the Colonial Fair was produced through managed scarcity and rumor. The Patok of the present is produced by algorithm. What lands for whom and whose terms, the question has not changed. The apparatus that answers it has. The loop was exercised in the colonial world through bodies in buildings, through rank you could see, investments you could identify. Authority announced itself because it had to. The mechanism was strategically visible by necessity. I think this is an important element of transition. No? So the colonial image, of course, had to be an image. But the contemporary apparatus is not necessarily an image, but it's almost invisible. No? The contemporary infrastructure dispenses with the mirrors and curtains. The feed presents itself as our own interests, reflected back with uncanny accuracy, the world arranged for our convenience. While the arrangement has already happened, in architecture we did not design and cannot inspect. The loop runs now below the threshold of visibility. Who controls the present still controls the past. Who controls the past still controls the future. The chapter leaves us with a reverberating obligation after more than a century. The endless, so this is like perhaps the most emphatic thing I'll have to say. The obligation that the chapter leaves us is this: the endless recirculation of historical injustice of whatever form is the memory work we are all called to do, generation after generation. The endless recirculation of historical injustice of whatever form is the memory work we are called to do, generation after generation. This has been given a name in theory, ontology. Walang H, parang kapampangan, Ma'am Odette. Ontology. The return of suppressed pasts as spectral presence, the undead insisting on the living. But ontology, in its aesthetic form, risks substituting the pleasure of the haunting for the demand that the haunting be answered. The scrolled wound, the viral grief, the heritage image that circulates forever without reaching the room it accuses. Again, it's a little bit of pause because I think I have enough time, no? Is that we see the wounds, in fact, all the time, but we just scroll through it. No? This is really the greatest tragedy of today. We see actually how tragic the world is, but we scroll through it. The scrolled wound, the viral grief, the heritage image that circulates forever without reaching the room it accuses. These are not what Chapter 18 models. Inutis spoke once before those who have sustained abuse and injustice, and the room was indicted. The argument is for that structure, not the ambient haunting, but the targeted, insistent, unanswerable apparition. Senor Leeds and Inutis do not complete the event, in other words. What turns the apparition into a historical force is what the crowd does with what the apparatus releases, the fragment that escapes the controlled room, picked up by someone at the threshold, carried across society in a version that has already changed. The crowd outside the velvet rail is not a coherent democratic public, still less the purified revolutionary subject that later nationalism imagined. It is a fairground crowd, assembled by commerce and leisure, and the social energy of waiting near what others are allowed to see. Volatile. They are capable of sharp interpretation, but they are also equally capable of dissipating into laughter and drift. No image can represent this crowd as such. This is not a failure of the apparatus awaiting correction, but a constitutive condition of political life. What the image can do is what Inutis did: give the crowd's pressure enough form and direction that the room has to respond. What the image can do is what the Inutis did: give the crowd's pressure enough form and direction that the room has to respond. The apparatus begins the event, the people must complete it. That completion is not one event but a practice. The daily unspectacular work of deciding to keep the injured visible, to keep the buried audible, to refuse the apathy of amnesia and the pleasures of pure enmity. The quiet of Senor Leeds' room, the order that prevailed while Imuthis had not yet spoken, was not peace. Tahimik kasi yung kwarto, no? It was the moan of silenced pain, administered calm, the absence of justice, wearing the name of stability. What is owed, by whom, and in what form? Those are questions that belong to those who carry the injury, which is to say, us, we. Our task is to insist that the debt has not been settled and that the room that pretended not to hear the accusation has not yet answered it. Again, we can ask at this juncture, what kind of image becomes necessary when power governs visibility and history survives only in damage-mediated form? We are called to ask this question generation after generation. The fair is over and the fair continues. The crowd outside Senor Leeds' room has not disappeared. It has been redistributed. The threshold has moved inside the apparatus itself. The contemporary figure of that crowd is not always the ordinary user of the feed. It can also be the person whose injury the feed does not rank highly enough to surface, the wound that never trends, the death that does not become a moment, the testimony that enters public space already discredited. Diba? The name that search returns nothing on, the precious lives lost and desacralized by organic and engineered cultures that reduce them by calling them na corned beef. The door is now algorithmic. The crowd outside it is not visible the way it was at Quiapo, because the architecture has not been designed so that the door does not appear to exist. The head rose from ash, spoke once, and returned to ash. What the living owe the buried is the next apparition, not to be the last one. So dyan po nagtatapos yung aking main na papel. Salamat po. Pero may konti akong addendum. So habang sinusulat ko tong papel na ito, kahapon, kahapon naman, hindi kanina, no? Saka matagal naman, natapos lang kahapon, pero matagal sinulat. However, so while I was finishing this paper, I came across an AI-generated video produced in an Iranian media context and circulated online. It vivifies what I'm trying to do or say more than I can say. But before I show it, I want to offer a frame because I recognize that the images I will be showing is inflammatory on the surface, and therefore it deserves a more precise interpretation than it has mostly received online. So gusto kong maghinay-hinay bago ipakita, no? So the video that I'll show you assembles in montage a sequence of injury, displacement, bombardment, occupation, genocide across decades, and places that catastrophe beside an altered monument of the Statue of Liberty before a missile hits. The logic is not documentary, obviously, but symbolic. It's AI, no? Different sites of suffering juxtaposed so that the viewer feels historical deja vu. Native America, Japan, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Palestine, Iran. In fact, kulang yung video because kulang yung Pilipinas. In fact, nung March, we just commemorated 120th year of the Buddaho massacre. And we remember that the Philippine-American War was actually genocidal. No? It came after Native America and it happened before Vietnam. So it should have been there actually in the video. Forgotten. No? Laging sinasabi, forgotten war. Forgotten everywhere, including in the Philippines. No? Nevertheless, what makes it evocative, this video, and provocative is not the violence, because it is violent, but the reversal. War images are already patok without this video, meaning sikat na naman ang violence. We watch them all the time in movies and television, missiles, burning cities, heroic soldiers, last stands. These are the tropes of blockbusters, streaming series, state propaganda. It doesn't need another video, in other words. That grammar has long been shaped globally by the perspective of the US through Hollywood and other dominant powers such as China. If you watch Chinese blockbuster movies, it's exactly the same blockbuster grammar. No? Their technological mastery, their benevolent sacrifice. This video answers that grammar with counter image from the other direction. War seems
seen from the side of those who remember themselves not as the rescued, but as the target. The Statue of Liberty, a familiar icon now, familiar as an ironically imperial image, is remade as an idol, Baal, struck down in a scene of historical return. Baal means Lord, Owner, Master in ancient Near East religion, the god of storm and sovereignty, and in biblical and polemical traditions, the false god. The video is crude. I admit it's propagandistic in form. Its imagery can slide into conspiracy codes that should not be reproduced uncritically, but its symbolic force lies in precisely the move that my paper has been trying to describe. The technically produced apparition, arriving unauthorized, insisting on what the room would prefer not to remember, would prefer not to address. I imagine many, if they had their way, would not authorize this image. But it is here anyway. It has been circulating. I received it via Telegram, which explains why it's low resolution. It is here anyway. And so with it, I end this short presentation. Salamat po.